Today, with the first pick, we're talking some of our favorite under-the-radar prospects and just good football players. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's Rick Spielman. This is episode 198. And Rick, before we get going, how many days until the 2025 NFL Draft?
Yep, Claire's producing today, so
Yep.
I know she couldn't sleep last night because she was anxious to find out how many days are left until the 2025 NFL Draft. And Claire, the unveiling of today's countdown clock, there are 161 days left until the 2025 NFL Draft.
And you may notice, Rick, if you're listening, you won't notice, but you should check it out on YouTube. I put up some Christmas lights around the old countdown clock. Rick, here's my deal. Typically, after Thanksgiving is when I will take the kids out and go get a Christmas tree. Never before then. But you know what? I said I'm going to mix it up this year. We're going to be festive. It's always draft season. What are your thoughts on the Christmas lights around the countdown board?
First of all, is the Christmas tree live or is it a...
Come on now, 100% live.
Okay, so how long before all those needles fall off? Will it last before?
So I haven't gotten the tree yet. I'll get that at Thanksgiving, but it'll be dead by December 20th, typically. And it'll stay up till January 4th. That's the rule.
No, I think you're starting to bring in, to me, it's a little early, just because, as you know, myself and Charles Davis are huge Hallmark fans. And they start their Christmas shows way too early. Every movie, like I'm not seeing Mysteries 101. I'm not seeing Aurora Tig Mysteries or any of the mysteries that I love on Hallmark. And instead they're showing all the Christmas movies. And I'm just not ready to get into the Christmas spirit. To me, Thanksgiving is when you start to get ready for Christmas. And you don't start shopping until the 24th. That's always been
that we also agree on. But that's also why we don't lead our respective households because we are last minute. And there's something else too, as the older people on this show, Rick, we are post-Thanksgiving celebrators of Christmas. Claire actually fires up her Christmas holiday decorations moments after Halloween, I found out. So she's a younger generation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's great, Claire. Thanks for contributing to the show today.
All right, Claire, too much cheer for the show. All right. By the way, Rick, I'm surprised you didn't bring this up. I was glad I was able to distract you with the holiday cheer conversation. But to offer some clarification, under the radar means players who, at least in our minds, should be getting more pub than maybe they have so far this season. And will likely get a lot more popular as we work our way through the draft process. By the way, Shrine Bowl acceptances and Senior Bowl acceptances are making their way to the internets. My guy Charles Grant accepted his Senior Bowl invite.
Your left tackle from Bill and Mary.
William Mary. A couple of the LSU guys we've spoken about on the defensive side of the ball. I think Braden Swinson, for example, I think he's accepted a Shrine Bowl invite. So those are guys we'll be keeping an eye on, but sort of leads the conversation. And by the way, just good football players, guys you want on your team, not because they may be the fastest or the strongest, but nobody's going to outwork them. Basically, the Rick Spielman of this show, translate that to a football team. That's who you want. Yeah.
Thank you for the compliment. I think that was a compliment, wasn't it?
Backhanded compliment for sure.
Yeah. No, he's not talented at all, but you just want him around.
He works hard. Hey, there's something to say for hard work. All right. So that's it. Not overthinking this thing. Let's get to it. First things first, Claire. Right on it. We're going to do the with the first pick quarterback rankings through week 11. And we'll just spend a few minutes on this. And Rick cannot make up his mind. He's flipping and flopping, snip, snap, snip, snap, to quote Michael Scott. He is now, again, reinstalled Shedeur Sanders as his number 1 quarterback. Cam Ward falls to 2 for Rick. Quinn Ewers makes an appearance at number 3. Almost, I don't want to disrespect Quinn. By process of elimination, he's probably been the best over the last few weeks. Garrett Nussmeier falls to 4, and Jackson Dart makes an appearance at number 5 after a couple good games back-to-back weeks. Got hurt last week in that Georgia game early. Stayed in there and made some plays. Rick, explain yourself from top to bottom, sir.
Yeah, it's, you're during this time of year, you're hoping to say, God, this guy played well and this guy played well. And you're like, man, this is a battle on who's better. Now it's a battle on who's worse. And it's like almost a process of elimination. So I put Sanders up there, and the only reason I did put him up there, I was able to watch the game against Texas Tech, and I watched Ward against Georgia Tech, neither of them were as accurate. Neither of them made the same type of plays off schedule. I think that they both struggled with inconsistencies throughout the game. They both made some, wild throws, which are going to make during the game. The one thing that Ward, he had 2 critical fumbles, which I knocked him down for. One and the one on the final drive where he had an opportunity to be a hero and ended up scrambling out of the pocket and ended up losing the game for him. There was a minute and some left against Georgia Tech at Georgia Tech. And
hey, let me ask you about that last fumble. Is that a knock against him, or is he just trying to make a play under some tough circumstances?
No, he's got to secure the ball.
Okay.
Regardless. It's ball security. Number one thing for a quarterback is, well, there's a lot of number one things, but ball security. And he carries the ball away from his body. He doesn't secure the ball. Now he's trying to get outside the pocket, and I understand he's scrambling, but ball security, especially in a critical point in that game. And I don't know. I didn't see the rankings. If it did knock him out of the playoffs, are they still in the playoffs? But it cost him an undefeated season. If he would have been able, even though he didn't play his best game, but take them down on a game-winning drive, he would still been my number one quarterback.
Here's what critics are going to say, though, when you say that. Cam Ward had done that 7 times previously or so.
Yeah. No, I'm going by this week.
Okay. Fair enough. I just want to make it clear for people that are going to get mad at you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just go on the Twitter machine and tell Ryan how you feel about me. Yeah, I'm good. But no, I just, based off this too, because they've been neck and neck, and Ward's been my guy ever since Beck fell off the cliff. He's been my number one guy. But the differential is the turnovers in a critical situation in the game. They both played on the road, both in tough environments. There was tortillas flying everywhere, whatever the heck they throw in Texas Tech on the field. They threw?
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, well, you had to learn, some traditions in college football. If we're going to do a podcast about draft,
I should probably learn those things.
Yeah. So, but the one thing, these two that drive me crazy, and you're seeing the same thing with Caleb Williams and why he's down. You can't hold the ball in the pocket. You can't scramble around. Yeah. Ward is a better athlete than Sanders. Sanders is not a scramble threat. Ward is. But Sanders ended up winning on the road. Ward didn't win on the road, hence the difference between 1 and 2. But it was more by not someone outperformed someone. It was the process of elimination.
Hey, let me ask you this, because we talked last podcast about Pat Shurmur, who was your offensive coordinator, an assistant coach in Minnesota. And now he, as you noted, is in Colorado. And he's had some thoughtful things to say about just the offense in general and coaching college versus the NFL. What do you think his conversations are with Shedeur and the offense at large about the things you're talking about? Like, let's play on time. Like, how do those conversations go?
I don't know. I'm sure he has to go through his dad, because his dad apparently is going to control the draft this year on some of the comments made over the last couple of days on, not publicly, but privately. He'll dictate where he goes and doesn't want to put him in a bad situation, which is another red flag.
Hey, let me read that. It's funny you mentioned that. I had pulled up those comments. So here's what Coach Prime said on a podcast. I can't remember which one. I apologize. Dion said, somebody that can handle the quarterback he is, and someone that can handle understanding what he's capable of, talking about his son and where he ends up NFL-wise. Someone that has success in the pass handling quarterbacks, or someone and an organization that understands what they're doing, not just throwing you out there amongst the wolves if you don't have the support infrastructure of the team. Forget the offensive line. He's played with lines that weren't great, but he's been able to do his thing. But just the infrastructure of the team and the direction of where we're going. And the point you mentioned, Dion said he wasn't going to say this publicly, but he would let teams know behind the scenes. The quote I just read, that's what we say every week about quarterbacks landing in good situations. So I'm not going to ding them for that. But if you're a GM or an owner or director of scouting and you hear those comments and you need a quarterback, how much of that conversation are you having in the meetings as you lead up to the eventual draft?
That's a significant part, because it sounds like his dad is going to be very influential on this situation. And with his dad's status, that could be making a major impact on some teams' decisions. And the draft, in my opinion, and maybe I'm old school, if you stink, you get the opportunity to get the best players available. That's why the league is there's parity. But if I have the number 1 overall pick and I need a quarterback, and I know I'm going to give him probably close to a $40 million probably guaranteed contract, and Coach Prime calls and says he don't want to go there, then you're in a situation, in a predicament. I don't think either of these quarterbacks are worthy of the number 1 overall pick, in my opinion. I think
that's right. I think we agree with that. I think most people would too. It's just a matter of need. And right now, I think the Giants have the number 2 overall pick, and they're probably taking a quarterback, right?
Yeah, you would think, but you got to be careful of overreaching too, because I don't think, if I had to grade, they're not the top 3 quarterbacks last year. And the way Bo Nix is playing, they may be behind Bo Nix right now. And the way
you might rather have, in fact, I would rather have Michael Penix Jr. just because he was able to play on time last year.
Correct. Yeah, he was much better from the pocket and much more accurate, and made many more plays than Sanders or Ward.
And remember the pushback you included at times. There was this narrative, which I sort of confused me at the time, but there wasn't a lot of love for Michael Penix Jr. in the first round.
That was back early on, but as everybody goes through the process and things change, I mean, because we don't know what goes on behind closed doors in the pre-draft process. We don't know what's being discussed from a character. We don't know what's being discussed from an intelligence, from a psychological standpoint. So a lot of those things could have an influence on where these guys eventually end up going. But I can tell you this, if I'm sitting in a general manager chair and I need a quarterback, that I am concerned about Coach Prime being involved in our decision. There was some question last year. Remember, I think even Caleb Williams' dad and involvement he was going to have in it, and it ended up not, influencing Chicago one way or another. But they've already made an offensive coordinator change, and we went down that last Tuesday on some of the over Rick actions. But it's you're in a pickle now if you need a quarterback this year. I'll just say that.
Let's do over Rick actions Thursday edition. Let's say you're the New York Giants. You have the number 2 overall pick. You're done with Daniel Jones. GM Rick Spielman, your job is you're on the hot seat. It's very warm. The owner wants a quarterback. Coach Prime, for the purpose of our conversation here, said to you, I do not want to go to New York given the way the team is currently built. I like you, Mr. Spielman, but my son will not sign a contract there. And the owner says, Mr. Spielman, we want a quarterback. What's that conversation going to be?
Oh boy, you come up with some doozers now. I mean, you just come up with grabbing straws, even though
it could happen. It happened with the Chargers back with Eli.
At what point in the NFL are you having to recruit a quarterback to draft? I don't get that.
You're so mad.
I can't even discuss it. I can understand in college, but in the NFL, we get to draft you. We get to choose you. You don't get to choose us. That's what the draft is called. I think that's the definition of the draft.
Right.
So that would drive me crazy. But if you're sitting there trying to sell New York, it's the best place for you. 1, it's the biggest market in the country. 2, you have some pretty good skill guys around the Malik neighbors. 3, the Dable has done a great job and probably was the biggest influence on the way that Josh Allen has performed when he was the offensive coordinator up in Buffalo. Now, it hasn't turned out that way in New York with Daniel Jones, but I don't know why. I don't know what is it. Was it a situation with Dan? Who knows? So, but that would drive me batty. That would keep me on podcasts because I get to draft you. You don't get to draft me.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, if you're having to sell, just for the purposes of our conversation, this isn't a slight against Shedeur, just so we can talk about it. If you're having to sell New York on anybody, you should probably have ended the conversation 5 minutes before and just go on to whatever's next.
But you better have some thick skin if you're going into that market.
That's the other thing, right? I mean, there are worse things than going to Jacksonville to play quarterback. For example, the market's a little smaller. There's not as much pressure, so on and so forth. Although Trevor Lawrence,
there's still pressure. You can't say there's not pressure because the national.
No, there's less pressure than New York City.
I'm just saying you're more scrutinized, not the pressure part, but you're going to be more scrutinized in a major market.
Yeah,
because everybody's got to sell papers. or whatever it is, internet stuff. Is it they still sell papers, Caitlin?
Who's Caitlin?
Who's Caitlin?
He got you spelling it with a C or a K? That depends on how close you got to getting it right. All right, let's mark that down.
You're awake, girl.
So Caitlin, we're gonna keep track, Claire, of how many names he gives you over the course of our careers together here. Caitlin's one. That's a good one. All right. So back to the QB rankings here. Nuss slipped. He's been inconsistent. I think we agree he needs to come back.
Oh, God,
Carson
yes.
Beck can come back. I'm pretty sure he needs to come back. Correct. Okay. And if you have to transfer, whatever, just come back and play, because as we sit here now, you're like top 75. We're getting close. And Jackson Dart. And Jackson Dart, we'll talk quickly about him. He didn't make my top 5, in case you're curious. Mine was Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Nussmeier still at 3 by default. I'm leaving Jalen Milroe at 4. I want him to come back as well, because he's basically a version of Anthony Richardson, but clearly Anthony Richardson hasn't exactly hit yet. So go back to school. And then Quinn Ewers is 5 for me. And if we're just drafting guys on experience, I think Quinn Ewers should be the 3rd guy off the board if you're looking for a quarterback. But let's talk about Jackson Dart. Last week at Georgia, 3rd play of the game, he held the ball a hair too long, turned his ankle, had to come out for 5 or 6 minutes of game time, came back late in the first, and was a very good game manager. I don't mean that as a slight. Threw 1 touchdown in the back of the end zone, a high point ball that the receiver made a great play on. Otherwise, wasn't asked to do a whole bunch. Went back and watched the Arkansas game from 2 weeks ago as well. He had 6 touchdowns. He was just throwing against air. He completed the balls. I'll give him that. Gave his wide receivers chances to make plays. They made plays and did a lot of the heavy lifting. So I think if we're being honest with ourselves, Jackson Dart has had a great season, but he's not a game changer. He's not going to come in and be a Jaden Daniels or even a Bo Nix at this point. And, we have to give Bo Nix his flowers, as the kids say, because he has really gotten better each and every week. But if you're looking at Jackson Dart, he feels like at the next level, not a starter, Rick, but someone that could be a good backup.
Yeah, he's a good athlete. I went back and watched Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Georgia, and I give him credit for gutting out that ankle, because I think that affected some of his accuracy. He wasn't as accurate in the Georgia game, but he had a gritty performance and even made a couple of plays with his legs that I didn't think he could make with that ankle injury. It was the left ankle, I believe.
Yep.
So, but he runs a Mississippi offense, which I don't know, there's going to be some question on how does that offense equate to an NFL offense. I think he has an adequate arm. I don't think he has the strongest arm in America. A lot of times you see him, he has to get his body behind throws. And you're right, the Oklahoma and especially the Arkansas game, it was like watching a 7-on-7. There was no defense. It was like watching what we do back in September. Who's the quarterback that threw for 22 touchdowns against North Carolina?
JMU versus UNC. The JMU quarterback. Yeah, he had a field day.
Yeah. It was but there was no one covering anybody. It was like on air, and that's what the Arkansas game looked like. I don't know if he has enough zit on. I didn't see enough tight window throws. I can understand the one-on-ones with the slants, but to zip it in between zone coverage, to put enough pepper on the ball, to fit it in those tight windows, I don't know if he can do that. So I do see him as probably a day 3 pick. And you're talking about our top 5 quarterback list, and he's number 5, and I'm not even thinking he's a Friday pick.
Right.
So that tells you the depth of this quarterback class.
But you said it at the top.
Huh?
I was going to say, you said it at the top. Typically, guys start to separate themselves
north.
No,
everybody's like, they had a meeting amongst all these guys, and okay, let's all play crappy this week to make it even more confusing, because Beck played horrible. He's played horrible the last 3 weeks. Nussmeier played horrible. I thought that was one of his worst games against Alabama. Ewers was okay, but he's had the best performances the previous 2 weeks.
And they beat the brakes off of Florida,
and then he had a win over Vandy. Ward's probably been the most consistent all year. Sanders is probably second behind Ward, realistically. But both of those guys play too much street ball. They hold on to the ball. And when you see quarterbacks like Caleb Williams, who's more talented than Ward or Sanders, struggling at the next level because he can't get through his progressions. He holds the ball too long in the pocket. He tries to scramble around, and you're not going to get away with that against NFL athletes.
Nope.
So that's my biggest concern with these two, Sanders and Ward, the supposed top 2 quarterbacks coming out in this year's draft class. I don't think their game right now, from that standpoint, equates to success in the NFL.
And before we take a break, I'll just say this. I did a mock draft for HQ last week, or maybe Monday I did it.
You did it without me?
Yeah, they just had me whip it up real quick. So I did 32 picks.
And I'm kind of like, was I like just, this was a shice aside, Rick, on opinions on your mock drafts?
Oh, we're doing one next week, so I think they didn't want to burn you out. Yeah, we're doing a mock draft next week to celebrate Thanksgiving. You're giving thanks for ripping my mock draft next week. But of the 32 picks, how many picks do you think were offense and how many do you think were defense?
This year?
Yeah.
I'm going to say more defense than offense.
20 to 12. 20 defense to
yeah. This is a stronger defensive class. Last year was a really strong offensive class.
Yep.
So I could see that very easily, that this being a first round defensive heavy draft.
Edge rushers and interior defensive linemen accounted for 12 of the 32 picks. So to your point, it's going to be the opposite of what we saw last year.
Yeah. And I didn't get a chance when we were talking about Dart. I wanted to give you my pro comp. So you can lose 2 more pieces of hair on top of those out of the 5 you have left on top of your
head. Before you do that, Trey Harris didn't play in this game. I don't think he played in the Arkansas game either. So he was without him. He did have Antoine Wells, just to give him the benefit of the doubt. Who's your comp for Jackson?
Who's your comp for Dart?
It's more athletic Matt Corral.
God.
But playing that offense, it's hard to tell. I think he's a little bigger than Matt Corral. May not have as big as arm, but you have to question what it looks like at the next level. All right, I can't imagine. Who else is left? Who's Jackson Dart?
Jackson Dart is a more athletic Spencer Rattler.
That's Claire. Kick him off the show.
What
are you talking about? You sound like, are you doing the Ryan Wilson drugs? How is he? What? His arms. Spencer Rattler's left arm is better than Jackson Dart's right arm.
Okay.
What are the similarities?
I just wanted to get a rise out of you today.
Fair enough. Mission to I fell for it. Okay, you got me. I didn't think first. I just reacted.
It actually is. Right. Go ahead.
All right. Let's take a break. I got to recompose myself. When we come back, we'll talk about some of these under the radar prospects right after this.
Saturdays at 3:30. It's big time. Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, Rick. Under the radar prospects. You told me the 4 names you're going to hit on, but you didn't tell me which category you want to put them in, and you can put them in both or split them up or do whatever you like, and I will be surprised in real time along with everyone else. But I'll just give you a step into the old with the first pick time machine to give you an idea of who we had as under the radar prospects in previous years. So 2023, that draft cycle. So this was December 2022. You had as under the radar prospects. And again, this is before, as the season was winding down, before the All-Star games happened and the combine and all the other things that got us excited about these players. You had Roschon Johnson, the running back out of Texas, who went to the Bears. Cody Mock plays for the Bucks now. He was a 2nd-round pick, I believe. Roschon was a 4th-round pick. And Cody went to North Dakota State. Xavier Hutchinson, you're still living that dream. The wide receiver at Iowa State that plays for Houston. And Quan Martin, who is in Washington. He played a lot of big slot out of Illinois. He's with the Commanders now. My list is a little less impressive. Blake Freeland, the tackle out of BYU. I think he's in Indy. I think he played last week because I believe the Central Michigan kid was injured, their left tackle. Andre Carter II, remember him? The Army kid who you noted at the combine had skinny wrists, and you were concerned about that, even though he was 6'5". He went undrafted. There was top 50 buzz about him for a while. Michael Wilson, my guy out of Stanford, who plays for San Francisco. And then Luke Musgrave wasn't really a known name at that point because he was at Oregon State. He had been a little banged up. The tight end who's also struggled to stay healthy now for Green Bay, but a fantastic athlete. And then last year, your guy was Austin Booker, the edge rusher out of Kansas, who the Bears traded back up to get. And I had Javon Solomon, the edge rusher out of Troy, sawed-off guy who plays for the Bills. And Both had good Senior Bowls. Okay, with all that out of the way and some backstory there, Mr. Spielman, give me the first name for your under-the-radar prospect.
These are under-the-radar prospects, and I'm going to tell you they're probably more than likely going to be picks on Saturday. You're not going to see them on Friday or in the first round, but just stuck out to me with some trait that I think will give them ability to play at the next level. So I'm going to start out with a defensive tackle from Toledo, Darius Alexander. I watched Mississippi State, Buffalo, Eastern Michigan. This guy has very good size. He's athletic. He has play strength. He's got a really strong upper body and can anchor at the point. There was no difference in the way he played against Mississippi State than he played against Eastern Michigan. So even when he lined up with a Power 4 school, his level or his play didn't drop off. I seen the same production. He's very good at getting off blocks, locating the ball, solid wrap-up tackler. I've seen him make a couple plays down the field just in pursuit and chase, and this kid's going to run really well at the combine. I thought he does flash as an inline pass rusher, very good with his hands. He has a quick arm over spin move. He's only had 3 sacks this year, but over 22 quarterback pressures and hits. So this kid is a beast on the field at the MAC level, and he really popped out to me when I was watching the tape. I tried to come up with a comp to him. The closest kind of smaller school comp that I came up with him was Broderick Martin from Western Kentucky.
Yep.
But I think he's a quicker twitched athlete, and Broderick Martin went in the 3rd round. So if this kid shows up at all-star games and performs there and knocks out the pre-draft process, he may slide into Friday. But I was really impressed with him as a football player.
So I watched Darius a few weeks ago because when I was putting together my top 50, his name had popped up on a few lists, and I agree with everything you said. He plays a lot of play a lot of 4 technique. They'll kick him inside to 2 and 3 technique, and they'll even line him up out wide in 3rd down situations and let him get after it. Unofficially, he is almost 6'4", 304, and I had late day 2 because of the juice you're talking about. You're gonna hate my comp, but I liked him, man. I didn't know who he was before. I said Christian Barmore.
Who?
Christian Barmore.
Okay.
Broderick Martin, Christian Barmore, somewhere in between there. How about that?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'll go back to Spencer Rattler for Dart.
Yeah, what's worse, Spencer Rattler, Jackson Dart, or Christian Barmore for Darius Alexander?
I think my comp of Dart and Rattler are much better comps than yours.
Shout out to Claire for having a picture of Darius Alexander. Excuse me. Shout out
to he's wearing a single digit this year, so that was a picture, I believe, from last year. Nice work, Claire.
He's number 9 now, if you're curious. But yes, I'm applauding Caitlin for doing the good things, not for
Karen.
All right, Robert. What's next?
I'm going to go, before I get to my 2 Alabama flashes, I'm going to go with a linebacker out of California, Teddy Buchanan. They estimate him at 6'2", 235, so he's not a small kid. This guy is an impressive athlete. I thought he was really good in coverage. He has excellent range. He can get after the quarterback when they blitz him. He's not an edge rusher, but he's a linebacker. There were numerous times, watch him against Miami and how he closes to Cam Ward and how he affected Cam Ward that game. That game really popped out to me. He can run with vertical threats. His biggest knock is his play strength, and he gets manhandled when he has to take on blockers in line. So this guy, athletic, can run, needs to improve his play strength, needs to improve getting off blocks when he gets engaged. But gosh, does he have speed and range, and that popped out on the tape. So I was trying to go through the Rolodex. I think he may be a draftable guy.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Why wouldn't he be? Just a play strength?
Think, again, right now, the knock on him is going to be the play strength and getting off blocks in line. But when I put him as a priority free agent or 7th round pick right now, but this kid reminded me a lot of Eric Wilson, who we signed as a priority free agent out of Cincinnati, played with us. I think he's currently playing with Green Bay. kind of a yoked up, undersized linebacker that's not as physical as Pace from last year. But this guy's athleticism just jumped off the tape at me, and his speed, his closing speed. There were a couple times he chased down people from across the field, and it looked like he was shot out of a cannon on his burst and explosiveness to get to the ball. Plays one of those kids that plays hard. He just needs to get stronger at the point in the run game.
Is this a conversation during draft meetings that maybe you find a tweener role for him, halfway between linebacker and safety, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, he can maybe play that big dime linebacker, a nickel dime linebacker. I don't think he's a, old school 2-down Mike.
Right.
But with the way the NFL has spread out, a lot of 3 receiver sets, I can see this guy being right off the bat. He may not get on the field defense right away, but as far as being a special team monster, I can't say what we used to call those guys that were going to be really good special teams players. But this guy can make immediate impact as a special teamer, in my opinion.
All right. Love it. Yeah. I didn't know who Teddy Buchanan was until you mentioned him. So I'm interested to go watch him, and we'll see what his All-Star game future holds, because hopefully we'll beat a couple of them, Rick, a little preview.
Yeah. The one game I would pop on, if you just want to get a feel for him, is watch him in the Miami game against Cam Ward.
Yeah, and that's what you do anyway. You see best on best and go from there when you're trying to evaluate guys.
Yes.
That's why Carson Beck should come back to school, because when you watch best on best for him, it's...
Well, you're saying he stinks because he got a Lamborghini.
Right. Should have taken the bus to the game, not the Lamborghini. All right. Here's one of my under-the-radar prospects. And this young man really isn't under the radar, but we haven't talked about him, so in that sense he is. He plays at Utah State, which has had a tough season. He's out for the year. Late October, he suffered a foot injury, so his season's over. But wide receiver Jalen Royals, and he was nominated as a 5-star prospect, and I had watched him a few times prior to that, so I knew we were going to talk about him at some point. I'm interested to see what you think when you get a chance to watch him, Rick, because he plays slot, plays outside. He's returning kicks. First half of this season, he hadn't done that prior to that, but he is electric. Last year, he had 71 catches for 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns. And basically, the plan is, and he's undersized here. He's probably 5'11" and under 200 pounds. They throw him hitches, they throw him screens, and they let him do everything else. And his ability in space is impressive. His ability to make players miss. Even though he's undersized, he will run through arm tackles. He shows some juice once he gets the ball in his hands in terms of running away from guys. And my comp for him, and this is Rich, and I'm sorry that you haven't seen him yet, Rick, so you could legitimately guffaw. Jaden Reed.
God, I can't wait to watch this guy then.
So I think he has a chance to be a top 50 guy, and that might be being disrespectful to him. So that's not under the radar necessarily, but he plays at Utah State, and they've struggled this year when he was healthy. So
yeah, that's good.
The other thing is this: the wide receiver class isn't that deep at the top.
Not as good as last year's class.
It's not close, really. I think wide receiver 3, you can make a case for Emeka Egbuka after Tedero McMillan, Luther Burden, and of course Travis Hunter. He's going to play every position. So I think if you told me, let me put it this way: would you take Jaden Reed in the first round?
I can't remember who was available at the time, so you would have to show me the draft board and who else was up there.
I have to look, but my point is that he's had a pretty good start to his.
Yeah, no, he's a really good player. My comparison to him was Randall Cobb.
Oh, mine was Spencer Rattler. That's weird.
Yeah.
So Jalen Royals, make a note, Rick. He's out for the year with. I don't know what his all-star future is, if he's going to be healthy for that or not, but we'll see if Rick agrees with me. Typically, you do, so I'm sure that's.
Oh yeah, I'll always agree with you. That's why we do the podcast together. So we're a bunch of yes men on here.
But Utah State, how about Jordan Love? There's a connection. Jaden Reed, Green Bay, Jordan Love, Utah State. All right, next up, my other under the radar prospect, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this young man. I did see Jim Nagy, the head of the Senior Bowl, tweet out his name a month or so ago. So I made a note and I watched him. So we talked on Tuesday about Johnny Newton for making the mistake against the Steelers that cost him that game. He was a top of the second round guy, defensive tackle at Illinois. His brother, Jerwan Newton, wide receiver out of Toledo.
Built very similar.
That was my first thought. I said, okay, they come in all shapes and sizes because he's not 6'4", 300 pounds. He's built more like Jalen Royals. He's not quite as twitched up as Jalen Royals, if you will. In fact, plays primarily outside, just do some slot. He's a returner, kick, and punt. And one of my questions was how fast is he deep speed wise? Because he's got some short area quickness and those things that we talk about. He can make defenders miss in space, get the ball in his hands and quick game, and then let him do the rest. Good hands away from his body, those sorts of things. And so he was a fun little watch. I think he's probably right now, until we find out how fast he is, probably an early day 3 guy, just based on me watching a handful of games, including the Mississippi State game. We talked about his teammate, Darius Alexander, who played well. Jawan had a pretty good game against Mississippi State. My comp for him, and this young man ran to the 4.5s coming out, had good hands, and was sort of an under-the-radar guy. Deontay Johnson out of Toledo.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I wish I could comment on that, but I'm looking forward to watching some of these guys, so I can disagree with you wholeheartedly.
I was going to say, I'm happy you can't comment because you don't know, so you just have to assume.
Yeah, he's an automatic Saturday pick for me because he looks like he has gym shorts on in this fifth.
Oh, Troy Fontana turned that into a first-round pick.
Yeah, with gym shorts.
Yeah, he's got his gym shorts on. He just came from doing his Pilates class right to the field and ran for 100 yards. All right, so those are my two, both offensive guys, both wide receivers, Jalen Royals out of Utah State. And we'll do a fuller 5-star review on Jalen because he was nominated once Rick gets an opportunity to get some eyeballs on him. And then Jawan Newton, wide receiver at Toledo. All right. I'm going to take another break. I'm going to come back and do some just good football players right after this.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
All right, Rick. Just good football players time. And this is a segment we've done for the life of this podcast, which, by the way, 2-year anniversary in 2 weeks from today on Thanksgiving. So once again, we have a lot to be thankful for, Rick. 2 years with me.
Yeah, that's we'll say prayers over Thanksgiving that you adopted me into your podcast.
2 years and 200 episodes. That is crazy town. But we did just good football players in years past as well. And here are some blasts from the past. Let's see who did better here. 2 years ago, the 2023 class. Your guy, John Michael Schmitz, the center out of Minnesota, went to the Giants, a wrestler. Deion Henley, which was a great one, out of Washington State, the linebacker, who's balling out for the Chargers. And then Thomas Incoom out of Central Michigan. And I don't remember if he was drafted. I don't remember if he's still in the league. But
yeah.
He was a fun player. He went to the Senior Bowl. I remember that. Had a pretty good week. My guy, because I got to stick with the short arm guys, Kalijah Cansey. So first round pick. That's a stretch.
Yeah. No, you were really digging deep into the list there to find good football.
Tommy Eichenberg, linebacker out of Ohio State. One of the most soft spoken individuals I've ever had the conversation.
Remember that interview?
He wanted nothing to do with us. He didn't care that your last name was Spielman. He was like, nope. Yes. No. Yes. I agree. And then finally, Sidney Brown, the safety at Illinois, who I really took a liking to during the draft process. Had an ACL his first year for Philadelphia. He's a safety. His brother is the running back, Chase Brown, for the Bengals. That's right. And then last year, you had Tommy Eichenberg again because he came back to school. You had Cam Scadabo, who came back to school, but who is very much a just good football player, and he's gotten better. Javon Bullard was another one of your guys, and Howard Cross. You're pretty good at this. You got those guys right. Howard Cross is the example of what I mentioned at the top. He may not be the fastest or the strongest, but you're not going to outwork him. He sort of has a little Braden Fisk in him in terms of his mentality. My guys for just good football players: Jalen Simpson, the safety out of Auburn, Jeremiah Trotter, who I thought was tougher than athletic, but he is a good athlete, and then Tully Fuaga, who ended up being a first round pick.
Well, you really go deep into this list on. Yeah. Well, let me look at these first rounders and see if they're just. God.
Or maybe
the purpose is to try to dig up gems that no one has heard. It's called rat hole players, the guys you have in your back pocket that maybe no one recognizes?
A couple things. Maybe it's the case that once I mention these names out loud, NFL teams take notice.
Okay. Yeah. No one would have noticed any of those guys.
And number two, my just good football players on this list, these guys are top 50 guys. I just love them. So I'm just letting you know.
Okay.
All right. You gotta pay the bills, Rick. So let me hear who your just good football players are.
All right. Here, I'm going with two guys from Alabama since I know these kids. I got an opportunity to meet with them and sit down with them, but no one's mentioning their names. But I was taken back, and I talked to a couple people, and none of them are very high on these kids yet. But I do, like I said, these guys would, for whatever reason, when I was watching the tape, they really popped out to me as just good football players.
Hey, let me ask you before you go on, though. So when you talk to people, is that just a function of it being mid-November and the area scouts haven't come back and there haven't been meetings yet, or is it something else?
No. It's just,
Okay.
hey, it's like sometimes I am fortunate enough to be at college games, so I see a lot of scouts if I'm out on the road or if I'm here or there, and just, BSing with those guys.
Yeah.
Just to see if they're seeing anything out there. But even talking to these guys, some of the guys that I've talked to, these guys, maybe I kind of, you fall in love with guys, even though they may be late round guys, but there's something to them that you really like.
No,
So
about that.
the two guys that kind of popped out to me down in Alabama, and they've got a lot of talent. They got the linebackers. They got some, the quarterback we've talked about. They got some pretty good young running backs. They got the receiver that's only a freshman.
Lineman.
Yeah, offensive lineman, Booker. So they got a ton, but no one talks about these guys. And sometimes these guys get lost in the shuffle. So my first guy is CJ Dupree. He's the tight end down there. He was a transfer from Louisville. Doesn't get a lot of targets. He walked into the room when I got an opportunity to visit with him. Probably 6'5", about 265.
Okay.
His thighs and lower body are unbelievable when you see it in person. And he's going to be a traditional Y. He's not going to be one of these Kincaids or someone that you're going to put out there to have a mismatch. He is a very good run blocker, although I went back and watched the LSU game, and I thought that was one of his poorest games as a run blocker. But I think he's underrated as an athlete for his size. He has really good hands. I don't think I charted a drop in any of the targets that he had. He, if you watch him, watch the Tennessee game. He catches a ball and hurdles a defender in the Tennessee game. And I was like, this guy is a way better athlete than I think people are giving him credit for. And the other thing that really surprised me a little bit was after the catch, he is very efficient at getting yards after the catch. Now, he's not going to put his foot in the ground and be a elude type guy, but with his power and strength, and he's going to run faster than people think. Because I think, at 265 pounds, he may be a 4'5", 4'6" guy.
Ooh.
At least off of my estimate, what I've seen on tape. But this kid is a strong, powerful runner that breaks a lot of tackles after the catch. And I think he has a chance to be a number 2 role player with the team. Again, he's not the Kincaids of the world or those athletic mismatches of the world. But if you want a guy that can do everything very well, but not exceptional, I think this guy is the guy that's going to pop up. Now, I hope he gets to go to an all-star game. I hope he gets a combine invite. And if he runs as fast as I think he's going to run, then all of a sudden, Rick, you remember on that podcast you were talking about this kid? That's what you'll say. I know you will say that.
Yeah, just like that. I like the deep voice. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but he only had one catch in the LSU game, and then he broke a tackle after the catch. He just wasn't as consistent as a run blocker, but I think this guy is a really good football player. And my pro comp to him was Jeremy Ruckert, who was Ohio State, drafted in the 3rd round with the Giants in 22. So a lot of similarities in body structure and that traditional Y type tight end. So I kind of made a pro comp to him. And the other kid that I will mention, it was down in Alabama. was Q Robinson. He's number 34. He's 6'5". He's only probably 245. Very long, lean, but he's a very explosive athlete. He's been he's been behind Dallas Turner. He's been behind Will Anderson. He's behind a couple other guys. He rotates in there. So these are the rat hole players, which are that you put in your back pocket. He plays about 25, 30 snaps a game in a rotation. But boy, is this kid long, linear, athletic. He does need to get a little stronger at the point on the run, but he is instinctive to locate the ball. He has range from sideline to sideline. I don't think he's going to be one of those linebackers that you drop in coverage, but as a pass rusher, he popped out to me as a pass rusher. He beat Will Compton this week on an inside move. He had 3 quarterback pressures against LSU, but he continues to show up. And some of the chase speed on some of these quarterbacks scrambling, you look at who the hell is 34? So you go down your depth chart and say, oh, that's Q Robinson. He's a local kid. He's from Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay.
I give this kid total credit because he was kind of buried in the depth chart, never transferred, stayed there, worked his tail off, and continued to get better each year. Now, if he would have transferred and maybe went to a place where he got a lot of play time, you may have recognized his name. But remember in September, we talked about the kid from Marshall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll look up his name. But yes, because he's getting some buzz.
This kid, to me, I liked him better than I liked the Marshall kid.
Okay.
The Marshall kid in September.
Michael Green.
Michael Green. Q Robinson is a name that probably will be a Saturday pick because I think he's going to run well, but just someone to keep on your radar.
Yeah, by the way, Jeremy Ruckert drafted by the Jets, not the Giants. I don't want people yelling at you about that, but you're in the right town.
Did I say Jets?
Yeah. No, you said Giants.
Oh, it's Jets. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew you knew. I just wanted to not people.
But you want to know who my pro comp was to him?
Yeah. So tell me again, how much is Q weigh?
He's probably 245, but he's
so
6'5". But his twitch, like his athleticism and twitch, reminded me of someone.
Okay, who you got?
Baron Browning, who just got traded from Denver. Yeah.
Okay.
So
and he's good. He didn't get traded because he was bad. He got traded because they had depth in Denver.
Yeah, and they ended up extending Cooper from both kids from Ohio State. So
right.
But the twitch is a pass rusher. This kid reminded me a lot of Baron Browning.
And by the way, talking about the tight end Dupree, the other thing I wanted to mention, if you are a traditional Y blocking tight end, you can play in the league for 12 years just doing that.
Yes.
You don't have to be a high-end athlete.
I just put a little bit more value on that because there's so many, and this is going to be a really good tight end class. I think running backs and tight ends are the two strongest positions on offense. Now, I don't know what your top 50 looks like in your mock drafts, but I really think those two positions are the strongest tight ends and running backs this year.
Yeah. No pushback from me on that. By the way, speaking of tight ends, I think it's pretty funny that my guy Darnell Washington for the Steelers, I don't know if you saw the tight ends coach was talking in generalities to the press about Darnell, and he let it slip by accident. He caught himself. He goes, yeah, Darnell weighs over 300 pounds. So he weighed 265 or something at the combine, ran 4.6, and now he's 3.08. He looks like an extra tackle, and he plays like it. So do your job, I guess is the takeaway. All right. Here are my just good football players. Two guys that are going to be top 50 picks all day long. This young man I put in my latest HQ.
You need to start finding some rat hole players.
Yeah, I had some. I mean, I could have swapped the guy we talked about, the wide receivers talked about earlier, but we haven't talked about these guys yet, so that's part of the reason. And I'll drill down. But these guys were fun to watch, and I wanted to get them some mentions. Some love, thank you. Shamar Stewart, the edge rusher at Texas A&M. Have you had the opportunity to see him yet?
No.
So 6'4",
number 5. Is it number 5?
Number 4. Just missed him by 1.
Yep. Number 5. He makes some knucklehead decisions. Talented.
Oh, okay, that's not Nick Scorton then.
No,
I don't know what number Nick is.
Scorton's 11.
Okay, thank you. So number 4, Shamar Stewart, edge rusher, 6'4", 285 unofficial, but they play him 5. They play him at 7. They'll kick him inside to 4 a little bit. So he moves up and down, even a little 0. They'll put him over the center in 3rd and long situations. And I'll just give you the comp up top because this is who he reminds me of in terms of the juice with which he plays, Darius Robinson, who we talked about last year a lot out of Missouri. And he'll play a little high at times, but when he's engaged, he can walk tackles back into the quarterback's lap consistently. He has a high motor. You know, he can win through the B gap if the off tackle oversets, does all the things that is reminiscent of what we saw Darius do last year. And when you have him inside, he can move the pocket against the interior offensive lineman when you're trying to get a rush a quarterback on 3rd and long. Hair on fire, pass rusher, freakishly powerful and athletic, nonstop motor. Those are my notes. Pretty good against the run, better against the pass right now. But I think he has a chance to be a top 32 guy, in part because the defensive line class is pretty deep and he's among the shining stars. And so not necessarily – he's a just good football player, but he ain't a rat hole player. He will be well known 161 days from now. But I just wanted to put him on your radar, Rick.
Give Claire kudos for getting the picture of the arm span. Very impressive.
Yeah, that's 30. I count 39 inches with my bare eyes. Is that good?
Yeah, that's very good. His elbows look like they're disjointed in this picture, but
he's Spider-Man. He can do everything. That's the amazing thing about him. And that's the LSU game there.
Yeah, nice job, Claire.
Yeah, Claire's on the ball.
Thank you.
Did you even know you got a shot of him with his wingspan up there and how important that is in an evaluation?
No, his arms look so weird in it though.
Yeah, you look weird. Yeah, shout out to what'd you call her?
Claire.
Shout out to Caitlin for that one. Got to make a note of these names. All right, Roberto. Next up, this guy I think gets drafted after Shamar Stewart, but man, is he fun. He plays primarily safety, but he can line up in the box, play in the slot, play deep safety. South Carolina, Nick Emanwari.
Oh,
this dude is huge. Number 7, unofficially 6'4", 220. And look, he's a little stiff in terms of changing the direction. Open his hips, covering the deep half. Fair enough, whatever. He's huge. But coming downhill, he is shot out of a cannon. And if you're running quick game against him, these little screens to the outside, he will destroy the 185-pound blocker, wide receiver, and then the ball carrier. And he can play in space. He's incredibly ball savvy. It seems like the ball always finds him. He has a couple of interceptions where he's just right place, right time, and you wonder how he got there. And he is incredibly physical. Sometimes a little wild coming downhill against the run from the heavens trying to make a tackle, but more times than not, he's wrapping up and he's thumping guys. And I had a tough time finding a comp for him. The name that sort of popped into my head was Divine Diablo out of plays for the Raiders now with Virginia Tech. He's sort of a hybrid role. I think this guy's better and more athletic and sort of more football savvy. I keep using that word, but he seems to have a nose for football. But
yeah, just listening to you describe him, anything compared to the Kansas City Chiefs drafted him. Was it Hicks out of Washington State last year?
Oh, Jaden Hicks. And then I didn't love Jaden Hicks as much as some people. I did like Brian Cook, though, who they drafted a few years before out of Cincinnati as that safety. Yeah, a little bit of that. That's right. And I don't think either of those guys, they weren't that tall. They could have been 200 plus. But yeah, and there was I meant to look his name up. There was a kid out of South Carolina 3 or 4 or 5 years ago who was an enormous cornerback that people kept talking about. And I didn't get it with him. He plays for the Cowboys now, or at least he did recently. This kid is not, this kid's a different conversation. This guy's the guy you put out there, and he's a tone setter. And I feel like you pair him up with your California linebacker guy, and you got guys running around with their hair on fire, sideline to sideline, just destroying stuff. So, again, I would take him.
Yeah, listening to you and trying to come up with a better comp, even though I haven't watched him yet.
Did you get one?
Yeah. It sounds like Hicks to me. Yeah.
He's better than Hicks.
Okay.
Brian Cook, I'll get behind that. But anyway, I think he has a chance to be a mid to early day 2 guy and maybe more as we get through this process. So right on brand for me. My just good football players are top 50 guys. But I hadn't watched him yet, and I heard there'd been some buzz about him. So I'll be interested to see what you think about him. Because if I know you, you'll love him, even though you may not admit that I was right. Oh, I got one more guy. I forgot. Sorry, Claire.
Great.
I did extra credit.
Yeah.
So another small school guy. This guy fits the bill. Finally, I forgot I had him on here. Upton Stout, cornerback out of Western Kentucky.
Oh.
5'9", 180. And that's what you got to do when you're 5'9", 180, Rick. You got to hold on for dear life. Claire's photo of him is making a hold on for dear life tackle against a ball carrier. And my first note was if he were 6 feet or taller, he'd be a top 50 guy all day long. I thoroughly enjoyed watching him. Good athlete, moves well laterally, change direction. Plays mostly slot, but they move him out wide. A little bit of box, a little bit of deep safety, not a returner at all. They played Alabama this year. In terms of big games, they played BC, Boston College, and drives on the ball in front of them. They line him up versus big, tall wide receivers. They don't care. He's incredibly physical, and he will fight. That leads us to the next point. He's just so handsy that he's going to get called sometimes for the DPI stuff that we concern ourselves with at the next level. But he's a smart guy, physical guy. He doesn't know that he's 5'9", 180. And like I said, if he were a little bit taller, I think he would be one of these guys that we'd be talking about a lot more. My comp for him was Michael Carter for the Jets in terms of sort of exceeding your physical limitations and getting the most out of.
Any similarities to the Utah kid I think Atlanta drafted?
I think he's a better athlete because that was one of the things. He ran a little slower than we thought, I think.
Right.
I can't remember his name, but right, the Utah kid that went to the Falcons. And look, at 5'9", you ain't playing outside, but they use him outside at Western Kentucky. But he'll be a slot guy, and he'll be a tone setter, and he'll hit you in the mouth. I don't know what his injury history is, but when you have guys that don't care, like the Bob Sanders mentality, you end up getting hurt a little bit more because you're going up hitting guys that outweigh you by 30, 40, 50 pounds. But there's no doubting that sort of his commitment to making plays. So he was fun. Upton Stout. Sounds like a lawyer. Hits like a hitman. How about that?
Very good.
Yeah. So I do love the game of
your humor is not as good as my humor. Just so you know that your jokes are not as good as my jokes. Would you agree, Claire?
I'm staying out of this one again.
Western solidarity there. All right. Let's take one more quick break, Rick, and then we'll look quickly ahead at the games coming up this weekend that we need to watch to see players play better at the college level, mostly quarterbacks, and we'll hit a couple of those right after this.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have a... Wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance, but you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount+. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right, Rick, week 12, somehow. College football season. The one game I have circled, Tennessee at Georgia. We can go on and on about Carson Beck. But the two players I'm most interested in seeing, 2 first-round talents, Jalen Walker, number 11, the inside linebacker / do-it-all defender for Georgia, and then number 27, James Pierce, Tennessee. And I went back and watched Pierce. I don't think I'd watched him a lot, but I watched a handful of his games last week. He plays not like he's 248 or whatever he is. He plays like he's 265 and just as juiced up. I don't know which player is better. They're both incredibly disruptive, but those 2 guys I'll be looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, there's not been a lot of buzz on Pierce, this fall, and I don't know why, because he was probably, we had him, I think, in the top 5 in preseason as one of the top 5 players in the country. So I haven't had an opportunity to see him play yet this year. So I'm looking forward to going back and watching why people aren't talking about him more, having more buzz.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's not a lot else going on in terms of matchups. Missouri's playing at South Carolina. South Carolina has a ton of guys on defense, and we've talked about those guys at every level. We just talked about Nick and Manwari, and maybe we'll have an opportunity to watch him again. Other than that, nothing really pops out to me. LSU is at Florida, but it feels like that game may have had a lot of buzz 6 weeks ago, and now you're just like, all right, let's see if we can make some improvements if you're Garrett Nussmeier or along the opposite line if you're Emory Jones. Otherwise, it's a pretty low-key affair. Clemson's at Pitt. Mercer's at Alabama. I think Alabama should be okay there.
Yeah.
And Texas at Arkansas. So if Arkansas plays defense like they did 2 weeks ago, Quinn Ewers is going to throw for 4,000 yards. They play better than that, we'll see. And they have a young quarterback that we've talked about before, Taylor Green. And And maybe we'll circle back to him once we figure out what his future is going to be. But he's a big, strong, athletic quarterback who's inconsistent like most of these guys. Otherwise, I think that's all we got. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Yay. We'll start celebrating holidays at Thanksgiving.
And by the way, with these invites and acceptances coming out from Shrine Bowl and Senior Bowl, we'll start ticking off those boxes as well. Just maybe hitting some highlights of those guys. Because
as they accept invitations, maybe we should have a segment, just looking at a couple each week as guys. If we haven't talked about them, that'd be a good way to tick off some of these guys, since we only have Ryan Wilson, 161 days, Claire, till the NFL 2025 draft.
Crazy. All right, that's it.
Don't forget about the East-West kids. There's always talent that comes out of there.
Oh my gosh! And fingers crossed, we're gonna make Debo dig into the Debo piggy bank and get us out there, because to your point, there's always kids, and the kids get better each and every year. Zay Flowers was there a few years ago. Dadrian Taylor Dimerson was there last year, along with some other guys, and those guys are making an impact. So, and if I've learned anything, Claire, is that Rick loves talking to these kids. So there's never too much of that. So hopefully we'll make that happen.
Claire, do you think my personality is good if I'm interviewing these kids?
I think so. I also find it hard to believe that you don't just like talking to anybody.
That's a good point. Is there anyone you don't like talking to?
No, I guess that's hard to say.
You don't want to talk to the player whose dad doesn't want him to go to your team. And we've learned that.
Oh yeah. No, I want to talk to him.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think I should, but I have to.
It's your job.
It's your job.
All right. That's it. 198 in the book, 2 away from 200. What a time to be alive. Thanks as always to my guy, Rick. Thanks to Claire and Caitlin for producing. Thanks to all you guys who watch and listen. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week.